Let's take you back to New South Wales Parliament. Gladys Berejiklian is appearing before budget estimates under questioning from Mark Latham about Daryl Maguire at the moment.
I have nothing further to add, and I get again, Mr. Latham, I put to you the same proposition that I put to Mr. Searle, that all of us collectively should trust and have faith in the processes that are here, should have trust and faith in the processes regarding integrity agencies, and let them do the work that they are to do. And I just ask for all of us to respect those processes.
Your Attorney-General told estimates on Tuesday it would be a conflict of interest for a police officer or an officer of the DPP to be collecting information concerning impropriety for one of their partners in life, a boyfriend, a de facto, a spouse. Do you think that standard concerning conflict of interest also applies to you and your ministers?
You're asking a hypothetical question, and you're also making specific assertions in your question that I don't agree with, and I don't exactly understand what you're asking me.
Well, I'm asking, in your government, does the same standard apply that the Attorney-General set out for police officers and officers of the DPP? And he said this on Tuesday, they shouldn't be involved in collecting material of impropriety concerning their partners in life because of the clear conflict of interest that they have an emotion attached to tip off their partner and perhaps spoil the investigations that might follow.
Well, firstly, I again reject the terms and the assertion you are making, and again I state these matters have been dealt with publicly, and also I wish to assert that all members of Parliament are made aware of their obligations, and at every time I have obviously abided and respected those obligations, and that's a matter for the public record.
Well, I wasn't making any assertion, Premier. You're answering questions that weren't actually asked. But moving on, what are your responsibilities for the approval of overseas travel by members of the executive government under the Ministerial Office Handbook?
I don't have the handbook in front of me, but my secretary may, and I might ask him to take that on board. Yeah.
Thanks, Premier.
Did you know that one of your parliamentary secretaries, Daryl Maguire...
No, excuse me. My secretary wanted to answer the question you asked.
Well, I know what's in the handbook. I've read it. So
well, why are you asking me the question?
Well, I'm asking what you know about it, and you said that you're indicating that you would need to be told by your secretary.
No, I'm indicating I don't have the handbook in front of me, and you're referring to specific parts of it. Yeah.
Well, so I would... You give it to members of the executive government for their overseas travel, and you've done that on many occasions. You must know that.
But given I don't have the handbook in front of me, it might be to the benefit of the committee to...
Time-wasting technique, Premier. Can we grow up and move on? Did you know that Daryl Maguire was overseas without your approval in April 2017, visiting Fiji, Samoa, Tonga and Vanuatu?
I will make a generic statement, Mr. Latham. There are various obligations that members of Parliament, parliamentary secretaries and ministers need to make in relation to the capacity in which they're overseas. There are also occasions I appreciate and understand that members may undertake private travel. It is the responsibility of each member to ensure that whether they're a member of Parliament, a backbencher, an opposition member, a government member, a parliamentary secretary or a minister, to make those appropriate disclosures or seek permission as required.
Well, that's not the question I asked. I asked, did you...
Sorry, Mr. Latham, we'll come back to this. I understand you can't hear the bell, but it's the opposition's time.
Without approval in April 2017.
Mr.
Thank you.
Apparently can't hear you.
Yeah, it's the opposition's time, Mr. Latham, so we'll come back to this, the opposition.
Premier, I'd like to ask about the Wagga Regional Conservatorium of Music. Are you familiar with this project?
I'm familiar with the concept. I'm not familiar with the detail.
Understood. When did you first become aware of the proposed project?
Oh, I can't give you an exact date, but it's something that had been publicly on the record. And as you appreciate, Mr. Graham, the New South Wales government had a policy of investing broadly across the state in regional conservatoriums. In fact, I only received a letter a few days ago from a community, I think it was Orange, thanking us for their funding. So it wouldn't have been anything irregular to have had requests made for conservatoriums of music in regional communities.
Exactly, and I think you might have been on a tour of this proposed project on the 10th of February 2017. You recall that tour?
I can't recall the date, but I would recall on a number of occasions in regional New South Wales when I have visited regional conservatoriums or proposed regional conservatoriums.
Yeah, and do you recall that tour of this?
I don't recall it very specifically, but I do recall being advised of the community's wish to have that funded, yep.
And you did that on site, yeah.
I can't recall, but if you have facts that I might not have, I can't recall where it was, but I recall community members approaching me, as they have done in many other regional communities for various projects.
And who first raised this proposal with you?
I couldn't remember.
This, the government's funded a range of regional conservatoria. This is a controversial proposal, though, because Wagga received $30 million, either in grants or reservations. That's more than all the other conservatoria put together. The departmental evidence, when asked about this and asked who made that reservation, this is what they said. Mr. Hanger for the department said the Premier made that commitment. He was then asked, so the Premier approved stage 2 of this funding being reserved, to which Mr. Hanger says yes. Premier, do you agree you approved the funding reservation for the second stage of this project?
Well, I don't. What I agree with is I think we put out a press release during the by-election that the government was committed to this project. However, all the funding arrangements and the due diligence would have been required to be undertaken by the relevant minister and the relevant agency. So I do recollect that during the by-election there was some announcement made about this, but it was no secret. I think a number of candidates and parties had committed to supporting this project. So I wouldn't agree with you that I specifically determined the amount or the funding allocation or the due diligence, but I do recall it was an issue during the by-election and it was on the public record. It was nothing untoward.